This is a great time to start thinking big and to start thinking expansively and start thinking about what we might do so that if we're ever allowed to have a free and fair election again, which I'm not sure that's going to happen, and Democrats are ever allowed to win such an election, which I'm not sure is going to happen, that at least if we do, in that kind of Goldilocks world, we come in with a plan, right? Because Republicans always come in with a plan, mainly to smash things, right? They come in with a plan to break things that I care about, right? Democrats come in with a plan with like super glue and flexi seal, and like we're gonna put the Humpty Dumpty back together again, right? We need to come in with a plan to actually smash things, smash some really bad things, and that's what the book is about.
How was your flight?
I just came in from Seattle, so the flight was very nice. As you know, generally do not like flying.
That's why I asked that question. That's why I asked it.
But it was nice on the way from Seattle. Coming from New York to Seattle, that was hell.
Did you see any deregulation?
Well, I was literally like, saying, like, hugging my kids tight and saying goodbye to my wife, because I was like, if I get doged on this plane, politicize the hell out of my dad. Like, right? If I die on one of these because of Elon Musk, I really want like the Elie Mystal flight attendant regulation. Like that's what I want.
Elon Musk, that's the one person you said if you had a chance to add a chapter to the book, you would. What would you say about Elon Musk?
Right, because when I was writing, so I wrote the book during the 2024 election, right? And I had the copy pretty much locked before the first Joe Biden debate. So I knew things weren't looking good when I was writing the book. I wasn't under illusions that we had a clear path to victory. Obviously, I was hopeful, but I knew that the book had to work regardless of who won. I figured if Harris won or Biden won when I was writing it, and then obviously if Harris won, it would be kind of an action plan for the kind of first 100 days of a Democratic Congress. I felt that if the Democrats lost, the book would be kind of the beginning of Project 2029, right? Like Republicans started writing Project 2025 in 2021 when they had no power, when they had just gotten their butts whooped, and when they had just failed a coup, and they were toxic. And yet they were just like, all right, but when we come back, we're gonna come in and we're gonna, right? So in a situation where the Democrats have no power, they've been kicked out of office. This is a great time to start thinking big and to start thinking expansively and start thinking about what we might do so that if we're ever allowed to have a free and fair election again, which I'm not sure that's gonna happen, and Democrats are ever allowed to win such an election, which I'm not sure is gonna happen, that at least if we do, in that kind of Goldilocks world, we come in with a plan, right? Because Republicans always come in with a plan, mainly to smash things, right? They come in with a plan to break things that I care about, right? Democrats come in with a plan with like super glue and flexi seal, and like we're gonna put the Humpty Dumpty back together again, right? We need to come in with a plan to actually smash things, smash some really bad things, and that's what the book is about. So in the context of that, the thing that I missed as I was writing it was the influence of Elon Musk. The idea that the world's richest man would be so directly involved in the governing of the country under a fascist dictator who does not like to share power or credit is something that surprised me, right? Like if you think about the classic press conference, Oval Office press conference, where Elon is there in his stupid hat with his kid, and Trump is just like sitting at the desk like a boob. Like I didn't see that dynamic actually happening. And so if I was writing the book again, I would have found, maybe not added a whole new section, but like pointed out in some of my discussion of these laws, the ways in which, not to go full Bernie Sanders, but the ways in which millionaires and billionaires can further metastasize and make some of our situations.
We were talking about the Heritage Foundation and their long agenda going back. I told my students recently to try to simplify them, what I see at play with Project 2025 is a dismantling of FDR's New Deal, LBJ's Great Society and War on Poverty, and Martin Luther King's Civil Rights Movement. So LBJ, MLK, and FDR. Would you agree with that 30-year window? That's a 30-year cycle from FDR to MLK and LBJ. Would you agree that Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation, the Trump agenda is about undermining those
I think in broad strokes, yeah, but I think I would even go kind of broader and more 30,000 feet with it and say that it's an attack on modernity, right? It's an attack on our modern way of life, a way of life that the Heritage Foundation and people who like them either don't like, have never respected, and have never wanted to live in this world, right? The Heritage Foundation are people who like look at Scarlett O'Hara at the beginning of Gone with the Wind and be like, that's the way. How can we get back? As God is my witness, I will never, like, that's how they're thinking, right? They kind of overlook the fact that the Scarlett O'Hara days were not great for most of us, including Scarlett O'Hara.
Right.
They kind of skip over that because it was good for Ashley, right? It was good. It was good for Cary Grant.
Right.
It was good for like the men in that world, and they want to get back to that. So it's not. So it's it's FDR, it's LBJ, it's MLK, it's all of these people, but it's also just a general attack on modernity. And they are wildly successful at that. They have been wildly successful at that, not just in the current right now 2025 moment that we live in, but they've been broadly successful at that for the past 20 or so years.
These laws, you use the word popular in the title. Doesn't that mean bipartisan the way you're using it?
Yes. Yes, that's one of the scoping mechanisms. Because look, between you and me, there are lots of laws, right? I have not read them all. Many of them are bad, right? So how do you kind of, from the full universe of every law out there, how do you scope a book? How do you get it down to a listicle number like 10, right? And so one of the scoping mechanisms that I had was I wanted laws that you could just repeal. Right? Not reform, not update for the modern era, laws that you could just strike from the books today and have our world better tomorrow. So a good example of this is the Anti-Drug Abuse Act. Now, I think our drug laws are terrible. I think they're in desperate need of reform. I think they're racist. Any bad thing I can say about them, I will say about them. But I'm not going to say we should have no drug laws, right? I don't work for the Sackler family. Right? I'm not Nino Brown. Like, I don't think we should have no drug laws. So the Anti-Drug Abuse Act is an example of a law that needs to be reformed, right? Whereas the laws that I talk about in the book, these are laws that we can just be done with, right? So that was the first scoping mechanism. And the second one is not one that I intended when I started researching, but the research kind of pulled me there as I was looking at the first laws that were in my head, and airline deregulation was one of them. Because again, I hate flying. I hate flying so much, I basically wrote a book about how much I hate flying. As I started to do the research, my process is usually, and this, people will say this is partisan, but my process is usually, if you show me something bad, I say, bring me the Republican who did this, right? Bring me the mustache twirling Republican behind the curtain that caused this destruction, right? And to be fair, there's always a mustache twirling Republican behind the curtain. They're always there, right? But as I started to do the research, I kept seeing Democrats. I kept seeing people on arguably my side of the aisle spearheading the law, promoting it, passing the law when they controlled Congress, or helping Republicans, giving them just enough votes to get it over the finish line, not filibustering. So the other winnowing mechanism, the other scoping mechanism for the book became laws that generally enjoyed broad bipartisan support when they were passed. Both parties wanted these terrible laws, and that seemed to me like a great place to start at what we should start taking away. Because in a lot of cases, after they passed the law, the Democrats were like, whoops, that didn't go right. But the law is still there, right? So at least Democrats like clean up, physician, heal thyself, clean up your own house, fix your own mistakes first, and then we can move forward as a society.
Yes. So you also talk about in the book the idea that felony murder is sexist, and I've never heard that, and I would love for you to explain how felony murder is sexist.
All right. Well, first I have to explain what felony murder is, right? So, your boy kills somebody, right? You didn't kill anybody. Your friend, your homie, your accomplice killed somebody. Can you be charged with murder? Right? Now, there are a couple of situations in which you can be. One, if you're an accomplice, right? there are tons of laws that track accomplice liability. So the classic case is like, I'm driving the car for a drive-by shooting and my boy leans out the shotgun seat and shoots Ricky from Boys in the Hood, right? Like, that's bad. And if you catch the guy that shot Ricky, you can also catch me because I was driving the car, right? I am an accomplice to Ricky's murder, right? The other kind of accomplice liability that most people understand is aiding and abetting, like after the fact or before the fact. So if I say, hey, Ricky works down at the gas station at 9 o'clock and the security camera is broken out back, I might be an accomplice to such a murder. The more famous example is Dr. Samuel Mudd, who treated John Wilkes Booth's leg after he shot President Lincoln, right? Now, this was not a situation where he was just like, oh, who are you? I don't know, I'm just gonna say, no. He knew exactly who John Wilkes Booth was. He knew exactly that the authorities were looking for him, and he set his leg and he helped him get away. Accomplice to murder, right? Felony murder is when you did neither of those things. You didn't aid and abet, you're not an accomplice, you had no idea the murder was supposed to go down, you were just there committing some other non-murdery felony, but your friends, perhaps completely without your knowledge, have committed a murder. So now they don't just charge your friends for murder, they charge you for murder. So I say that is fundamentally unjust, that we should fundamentally charge people for what they did or what they intended to do, not what somebody else did or somebody else intended to do. Because while everybody thinks of felony murder in this kind of classic situation of like two people rob a bank and one guy shoots the teller and you charge them both with murder, that's not actually how it happens most of the time. Most of the time what happens is two people rob a bank, the cop shoots one of them, and the person who survives gets charged with murder. The cops come to your house, they don't knock on the door to serve a warrant against you. You, not wanting to be apprehended by the cops, try to flee. That's a felony. You're not allowed to run away from a warrant. But the cops trying to stop you from fleeing shoot up your whole house and kill your wife. And you get charged with the murder of your wife that the cop shot. That's a felony murder case. And that's why I'm saying felony murder as a concept is unjust. That is not just me saying it. That is every other common law country in the world saying it. Common law is people who get their laws from, the Magna Carta or whatever, from ye old misty England. But England, which invented felony murder, was like, yeah, we're not going to do it anymore. England got rid of felony murder in like 1950s. Ireland, Scotland, India, they all got rid of it. Canada made felony murder unconstitutional in the 90s. We're the only ones with it left. And so while everybody can generally see that felony murder, and so now explaining what it is, I think most people are going to see how that's going to end up being very racist. That black people are going to be charged more often for the crimes that they are held collectively responsible for, even though they didn't pull the trigger or do anything, whereas white folks will be individually responsible. And so if you're a white guy and you didn't pull the trigger, you're unlikely to get charged with felony murder. Most people can see that. But what a lot of people don't understand is that it is also one of the most sexist laws in the country. In California, most women who are in jail for murder are in jail for felony murder. And in most of those situations, not all, I didn't do all the research on this, right? But in many of those situations, you can argue that their felony murder is a survival act, right? An abusive domestic partner is like, you're gonna drive the car while I go in and rob the bodega. Do you have a choice from a kind of psychological perspective to be like, no, screw you, I'm not driving the car. Find one of your other hoes to drive the car? You drive the car. You don't know that your boyfriend's gonna go in there and shoot up the place. He just said he was gonna rob the bodega. You're parked 2 blocks away. Your boyfriend goes in, robs the bodega, kills the cashier, comes back, hops in your car, you drive away, you're charged with felony murder. It's sexist. And what you find is that in many situations where women are jailed for violent crimes, they are jailed for violent crimes that they did not commit, that their often abusive domestic partner committed. So it ends up being one of the most sexist laws we have, in addition to its obvious racism.
That's very enlightening to me. I wanted to move a little bit and ask you about the January 6 pardons and what your thoughts are about the January 6 pardons in general.
They're bad. You probably shouldn't pardon terrorists. And that's what they did. I mean, what I will say is that everybody knew he was going to do it. Like, there's not a single person who voted for Trump who can credibly say they did not know he was going to pardon all of the terrorists who attacked the Capitol. And quite frankly, there's not a single person who sat on the couch and didn't participate at all that doesn't share some of the responsibility for that, because Trump was very clear about what he was going to do regarding those terrorists if he ever got power again. Of course, look, if you do you can look in world history on this. If you do a coup and you don't get in trouble for it, you're going to do some more coup, right? Like, that's just how it's going to work. So obviously he's going to pardon all the people who fought for him to stay in power. It's obviously kind of completely horrible and bad. But the other thing that's always funny to me about funny is not the right word, but you'll get what I'm saying. I'm sitting in my office and I'm about to hit publish on a post just destroying Merrick Garland. Because Merrick Garland was supposed to be nominated for Attorney General on January 6th. That's when Biden was going to announce Garland. And I had this entire post ready to go about how Garland was the wrong guy. How he wasn't he didn't have the dog in him to do what was necessary to go after Trump for his crimes that he committed while Trump was in office. And remember, I wrote this article on like January 4th, January 5th. I'm talking about the Mueller report at this point, right? Garland does not have the dog in him to go after Trump on the Mueller report, which is what needs to happen, right? That's the article, right? And so I'm about to hit publish on this article, and you watch the TV and you're like, oh, I can't publish this. This is useless now. Right. The world has changed. They're doing a coup on TV. And so, you talk to a lot of other folks. You talk to your friends. As everybody's texting each other. I'm talking to some of my black friends, some of my black media friends. And I was like, guys, can you imagine what would happen if it was a bunch of black people trying to do this? And Reverend Mark Thompson says, brother, you could not find even 1,000 black men in this entire country to do that. Not because we love the government, but because we all know, every single one of them would know it was a suicide.
And I can prove it. I went to the Million Man March in 1985 when Farrakhan called the Million Man March. 2.5 million black people were there, black men. We knew that the military, we knew that the army, we knew everything, the DC police, everything was on high alert. If one man acted out, that day not one person was arrested. But we knew, and that's what I mean by January 6th, this sort of racial double standard. If Obama acted like Trump, white America wouldn't accept it. If black folk acted like January 6th folk, white people wouldn't accept it. If a black man went into the Speaker of the House's office and we wouldn't have defecated on her desk. We would have been lynched. There would be a 200 year, well, I don't exaggerate. There'd be an ongoing politics of disgust towards us.
We would not have gotten close enough to the Capitol to break a window. Are you kidding me? They would have opened fired on our as we approached the building, right, on spec. And if Obama was the one telling people to go do that, his ass would still be in Gitmo. Right? He'd be sitting there being like, man, I should have closed this when I had the chance, because he'd be like literally there.
Yeah. No, when Obama got finished and they elected Trump, I think I was here. And I said, Obama might as well have walked around for 8 years with his fist up saying black power, because he still got Trump.
Yeah. It's Trump is the white reaction to having to deal with a black president for 8 years. But the legal reaction but the legal reaction started earlier, right? So Barack Obama wins in 2008. What is the white legal reaction to Barack Obama winning and having a black president in this country? It's Citizens United. That case comes out right after Obama gets elected, because if you think about how Obama got elected, he got elected not with the Elon Musks and what does Trump call him, Tim Apple, or he didn't get elected with all the tech bro money in this city or whatever. He got elected with a lot of small dollar donations, right? So your first response to that is to have the Citizens United unleash dark money into politics, make it almost impossible to run for office, run for presidency just based based on small dollar donations again, right? And it doesn't work because he wins again, right? And he doesn't just win, he wins against your richest white man that you found available, right? He wins against Mitt, Bain, Capital, Romney, dog on roof, like kind of like the guy who in the dictionary is pictures next to the word white man, right? And he kicks his ass, right? So what's the second response? What's the second legal response to that? It's Shelby County v. Holder. It's the case that eviscerates the Voting Rights Act because white people figured out that, oh my goodness, black people now have enough political power in coalition with allies. The people of color together, women together, have enough political power to stop our whitest white man. We can't let that happen. We've got to suppress the vote. We've got to eviscerate the Voting Rights Act, which I've always said is the most important single piece of legislation ever passed in American history. It is the piece of legislation that makes us not an apartheid state like we were for the first 150 years. And they took that out, they eviscerated, they didn't completely take it away, but they eviscerated the Voting Rights Act ability to stop voter suppression in 2013. That's the legal response to having a black president. And that leads directly into Donald Trump. I do not believe that Trump would have won in 2016. And I have lots of issues with how Hillary ran that campaign. I still voted for her. I'm not an idiot. I do not believe Trump wins that campaign in 2016 if the Voting Rights Act had been allowed to function as it had been functioning since 1965.
You're a Harvard man. Your wife is a Harvard lawyer. Harvard is in the headlines every day now, and I think this morning Donald Trump asked the IRS to remove the tax-exempt status of Harvard.
Yep.
Harvard has 50-something billion and said middle finger to you, Donald Trump, on anything you did. And Columbia should have done that, right? But didn't. And it had plenty of money that it could look down on $400 million from Trump. They didn't need that money.
Well, okay, so here's the thing about Harvard. And I know this from some experience. Harvard has almost as much money as God. And that is not a joke. The list of organizations with the largest private endowments goes number 1, the Vatican. Number 2, Harvard University. Harvard has almost as much money as God. And so for them to stand up, I do think that them standing up is something that they have a financial resource and ability to do that even a Columbia doesn't. Because as much as Trump is dangling $400 million in front of them, look, my literal 25th college reunion anniversary, my 25th reunion is coming up this summer. For my class at Harvard College. If Harvard today said we need to raise $400 million just from the class of 2000 by your reunion in June, they could probably do it. I think they could probably do it. Mm-hmm. Maybe you'd have to give us till September because we're Gen X and we're a little bit slackery. But like, they could probably get that done, right? So like the amount of money that Harvard is able to bring to bear does, I think, put them in a different category even than their other elite peers. But this tax exempt thing, that changes the entire ballgame. And again, it's not gonna super change the entire ballgame for Harvard because again, almost as much money as God. But if you think about what that is really doing, that affects every university, and it also affects every single nonprofit in the country. Because every nonprofit enjoys 501c tax-exempt status, and if you take that away from nonprofits, but because who is he not with? But you leave the Vatican alone. You leave the churches alone, so you can still have tax-exempt status if you are a church, but you can't have it if you're a nonprofit. That doesn't just kill nonprofits, it completely tilts our entire kind of political, societal discussion in the favor of the religious right away from secular organizations of all sorts. So it's not just that like even Harvard has to respect the loss of tax exempt status, but like much more sort of than Harvard, like that is an attack on, that is a much broader attack on our society.
You expressed to Amy Goodman on her show and Charlamagne tha God and the others on the Breakfast Club that we now live in a fascist dictatorship. Can you talk about that?
I feel like people keep waiting for like the New York Times to like, fascist dictatorship starts on Thursday, right? Stock up on canned goods now. That's not how it happens. That's not how it's ever happened in history. There's never one demarcation point. Yesterday, we were democratic. Tomorrow, we're fascist. That's not even how it happened in Rome. That's not even how it happened when Augustus established the end of the Roman Republic. He did not write a headline, "I'm ending the Roman Republic today." That's not how it ever works. The way fascism works is to slowly take away your rights, slowly take away people's freedoms, and have that become normalized, so that everybody just thinks that that's how it kind of always is and always has been. They only lost a little bit yesterday. They're only going to lose a little bit tomorrow. There's never one inciting point. And so it's a little just frog in boiling water situation. Adam Serwer, who's a columnist for The Atlantic, he made me buy a book called They Thought They Were Free. Is written like 1943, and it's about regular Germans, not just the Nazis, not just the Goebbels and the generals and the Eva Brauns and whatever. It was like the baker, right? Who's like, and it's an interview of them, and they didn't think they were in a fascist dictatorship. They didn't think they were unfree, and they didn't think they were the bad guys. Oh, some bad things were happening, but it was only happening to bad people, right? You ever see like The Sopranos? It only happens to the worst people, right? It's not happening to me. I'm just a baker, man. I don't even like politics. I'm just here to make the donuts. Why are you asking me these questions? I just live here. That was their mentality in 1938 Germany. That is our mentality today. Most of us just live here. Most of us are just keeping our head down, just doing what we're doing, and telling ourselves, well, it's only happening to those people. Fascist, see, it's hard because I don't want to sound like Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? But like, if you think about like how the sun gets power, right?
You do sound like him.
Right? Right? It gets power by fusing atoms together, right? Hydrogen matches them together, and now you have helium, right? But eventually the sun uses up all of its hydrogen. And so now it has to start fusing bigger elements. Now it has to fuse helium and helium together, right, to create the nuclear explosion, right? And to do that, to get that kind of power, the sun has to get bigger. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it finally fuses iron, and then it blows up. Fascism works the same way. It has to start on a very small outgroup, right? So that most people can feel, well, it's only happened to the worst people. It's only happening to the criminals. It's only happened to the Venezuelans. It's only happening to the undocumented immigrants. But eventually, the fascist has to declare victory over the problem that he says is the most important problem in the world, right? Trump is in charge now. He can't blame Biden for the immigration problem forever. He can't blame Obama. I mean, he's still trying to, but at some point, he can't blame the black guy for his problems, right? So if he tells all these people that immigration is the most deadly problem that we have in this country, eventually he has to declare victory. He has to say, I fixed it for you. You're welcome, right? But fascism only works as long as people are terrified, as long as people are afraid of what's coming around the corner. So then he has to, so after declaring victory against the immigrant invasion that doesn't actually exist, he's going to have to expand the group. Oh, I fixed this problem, but now we got to worry about whatever it's going to be, puppies. I don't know. He'll find somebody else to blame, right? Now we got to worry about these women with their crazy menstrual cycles. We got to stop that, right? And so the group has to expand and expand and expand. He has to find a group, fix it, and then expand it again. And that's eventually how fascism blows up. But in the interregnum, between it starting and it blowing up, there's a lot of nuclear explosions.
So I have to do a commercial. We're at the Commonwealth Club and World Affairs, and these cards are being passed out or around you. You have them. If you want to pass it to your right or to the person coming around, if you want to get your question forward, I'll do my best to read it to Ellie so that he can answer your question and you can get your your question in. In the meantime, was going to ask you, Roe v. Wade is gone, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that it was, not based on equal protection where it should have been. It was based on the nebulous concept of the right to privacy. Brown v. Board, with Herbert Wexler, the Harvard law professor who wrote Neutral Principles around the Brown v. Board decision, sort of came around and looked at the fact that it was based not on constitutional protections, but based on the Kenneth and Mamie Clark Dahl study. So right to privacy, Dahl study. Roe v. Wade gone because it's not in the Constitution. It's an implied right. Brown v. Board, implied right based on a Dahl study, or segregation, separate but equal, is inherently unequal. Amy Coney Barrett and recently other members of the Supreme Court have refused to say whether Brown is settled law. I tell my students, I think we're headed back to going back to the 60s, the 70s. In other words, it seems to me that that Brown v. Board, I guess my question to you is, can you foresee the overturning of Brown?
Absolutely. Clarence Thomas gets this right. It's his way. It'll already be gone. No, I don't think Brown is first on their list. Roe was always first on their list. Roe was the thing. Roe was a galvanizing force on their side. I slightly disagree with Ginsburg, by the way. I don't just think that you can cite the right to abortion under the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. I also think you can cite it under the 13th Amendment's prohibition against forced labor.
Wow. Deep.
It's right there.
Right.
For 9 months, you can't rent out a woman's womb against her will. I'm pretty sure I read that in school.
Right.
So yes, but they say it's an implied right. Brown is in a similarly shaky position, according to these conservatives, where there's nothing in the Constitution other than the Equal Protection Clause. Mm-hmm. And since conservatives are able to ignore the Equal Protection Clause to get rid of Roe, there's no reason why they can't ignore the Equal Protection Clause to get rid of Brown. Clarence Thomas likes to say that the Constitution is colorblind. It is not, right? 3/5 of me says it's not. The Reconstruction Amendments were designed specifically to address the fact that it's not, and specifically to allow for racial redress of past wrongs. That's why those three amendments, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, were written. But when you say that the Constitution is colorblind without actually any evidence, without being correct, that is how you start to get at the idea that programs that are designed to force this country to actually be colorblind or act colorblind in some way are themselves unconstitutional violations of the Equal Protection Clause. It's a circuitous argument that is covered more in shit than logic, but that's where they're gonna go. Now, again, I don't think that it's first on their chopping block. They wanna, having taken away women's rights, they want to go after gay and trans people next. Like it's the LGBTQ community that is currently on the firing line for them. They're going to get to that first before they get to Brown v. Board of Ed. But there's something else that's interesting about Brown v. Board that I don't think a lot of people have kind of thought about. Integration was not actually the thing that black folks were asking for.
That's right.
Right? We were asking not for integration. We didn't necessarily want to go to school with Chip. Chip sucks. Why do I want to send my kids to go to school? Right? We wanted our money. Black people pay taxes into the system. We want to get the same benefit of any other taxpayer into our own communities. Brown v. Board of Ed was a consolidation of multiple cases. One of those cases was Bell v. South Carolina. What the people in Bell were asking for was not integration of schools. They had a white school, they had a black school. Right? They wanted to be able to send their kids to the black school, but the white school had publicly funded buses. The black school didn't have publicly funded buses, so the black parents in South Carolina in rainy season had to send their kids basically fording rivers to get to school. They didn't want to do that. They wanted a bus. A bus. The white school had 8 buses. They wanted a bus. And instead of giving the black folks a bus to send their children to their black school, they're like, oh, f it, you can just go to the white school then. Yeah. Nobody asked for that. Nobody asked for that. And they still didn't get the bus. So, I'm not joking, they still didn't get the bus. So now you had a functional black school that was doing good in their community, that was raising black children up as opposed to holding them down. They wanted a bus to that school, they didn't get the bus, and instead they got sent to the white school, which was just gonna crush the spirit of their black children, and their black kids still had to walk to school because they wouldn't provide a bus to their community. So now you're competing against white folks, but your kid had to walk 9 miles and swim to get to school, and the white kid got to go on the bus. This problem has never actually been addressed. Because you see that in community after community where black people put into the tax system but don't get out the services and resources for our communities that the white folks get. And that becomes the entire unbalancing of the problem. I live in a historically red line town. There is literally a fountain in the center of town. The black folks live south of the fountain. The white folks live north of the fountain. I live in the white part of town. The south part of my town, it's a suburbs in New York City, right? The south part of my town looks like the Bronx, man. I like to go there for jerk chicken, right? I like to go there from Spices. I don't like to live there. Right? Black part of my town is in rough shape. The white part of my town is like something out of The Great Gatsby. Like it's like, you know, like Leonardo DiCaprio is like, hey, how you doing, Ellie? Welcome home, right? It's like that kind of whatever, right? But the town is integrated now, right? So what happens with the schools? When I moved into my house, the first thing 3 of my neighbors said, one of whom was black, was, welcome to the neighborhood. You know you can't send your kids to the school, right? To the public school, because there's no... It's fine for elementary school, but by the time you get to high school, you just can't do it. 3 of my neighbors, one of them black, all said that to me. So I'm like, I'm liberal. I'm like, oh, whatever. Hear that shit. I go to the school board meeting. I come out of the school board meeting. I was like, oh, no. No. Right? The white folks vote down the school budget every year and send their kids to private school. The black folks pay into the school board budget every year, but their school is crap, right? They can't afford the private school that I send my kids to, and all the white families on my block and the black families on my block send our kids to. They can't afford to send the kids to the expensive, fancy private school. They have to use the public school. But the white folks who can afford to put money into the tax system to make the community school better vote down the budget, and starve that school of money. And one of the reasons why I made the choice that all my neighbors have made was that I was like, dude, I'm one guy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I believe in these issues and I believe in the whatever, but like, my kid is not a guinea pig. Right. I can't change the entire school system. So all I can do is, like, every time the vote comes up, I'm like, we should increase the school board budget. Right? But you send your kids to private school. Why do you care? I have something called empathy. So
you see, this is from the floor. It says, and I guess what I wanted to ask this question too, but I'll read it as the person presented it, but I add my own aspect. In your book, you talk about your mom. You talk about your dad. Your mom was born in Mississippi in the 50s. You're from New York. Mm-hmm. What part of those 3 dynamics, mom, dad, and New Yorker, explains your approach and your bluntness or your fearless presentation? And this person asks, with that, you speak such truth to power, which I love and deeply respect. You seem fearless. Are you? How do you balance fear, safety needs with your apparent burning need to speak truth? And that was the question I erased last night and said, no, I don't want to put this in his head. I don't want to make him be afraid if he's not afraid. But I'm glad whoever asked it, because I wanted to ask that question.
First of all, I love apparent burning need. How do you deal with, like, clearly your ego that is so far up your own ass? It's a good question. I've been asked that before. I'll talk about the safety thing in a second. I'll explain like how you end up like me, so you don't do this to your own children. The best way of, okay, I know I do. All right, so the very first time I go on MSNBC, It's not my very first time on television, but it's like my first time on television that I respect. So I am in my suit and tie, buttoned up. I've got my talking points, on my freaking, on my notes. All my notes are on my phone. I got my talking points. I'm going over my talking points in the mirror. I get on set. I have my segment. I stick to my talking points like a Democratic operative of the first resort, right? Just, I'm not screaming up. My hair is close cropped. I've got it lined up. Right, I am looking like I'm looking the part, right? And I come home and I'm like, Jazz, I think it went well, right? I think I did well. And I come home. My mom lives with me. We have a mother-in-law suite, so she lives with us. And I walk in the door and she's waiting for me. And I'm like, oh great, because she watches MSC all the time. And she goes, what the was that? Like, did I stutter? Like, what were you? Well, I mean, you just sounded like everybody else. I was like, well, I was on TV. I didn't raise everybody else.
I know that's right.
I was like, this woman is not playing, right? So the second time I go on TV, I was myself. I just talked like I was talking to her. And she was happy. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna do that all the time now because I don't need this in my life. Right? I just don't need her in my, on my about this, so I'm just gonna be myself, and we'll just see how that rolls, right? So that's a great story about that was obviously very later in life. My mom is kind of always like that. My dad too. They had very little respect for me playing a role. They never liked that whenever I would try, because there were times when I would try to be all I could be. And they never had any respect for that, literally. So if I wanted respect in my own household, I literally had to say something interesting, right? And be informed. Like my uncle is a philosophy professor at the UNC Charlotte.
Okay.
And the joke in the family is like, for me to be able to get a word in edgewise when my dad and my uncle and my mother were like talking, like I couldn't ask for a cookie unless I could prove why I needed the cookie, right? Right. Well, Mom, you control the means of production of cookies. I feel like this is an alienation. Like that's how I can get a cookie. So that's kind of like how you end up with something like me.
Oh, that is funny. It's funny.
In terms of the safety, though, that has been different recently. The hair is a sign to people recognize me because of the hair. And when I first started, and even I would say all the way through this summer, when I would get people, it would either be very positive, hi, so nice to meet you, I like your stuff or whatever, or if it was negative, it was somebody who actually wanted to debate me. I heard you say this on Tucker. I've never been on Tucker. You heard the clip that Tucker took from whatever. I heard you say this on Tucker and I really disagree. But they wanted to interact. And I'm literally able, I'm having a drink in the airport bar and you want to come at me, good luck. But I got time, right? And I got 35 minutes to my flight, let's go. And I was cool with that. Sometime around this summer, it started to change where you could see people looking at you and recognizing you and just sneering at you. And that's off-putting, right? Because they don't have to talk, they don't want to debate you, they just know they hate you. Right, and it's just that sneer that they're eyeballing you as you walk through, and you'll feel them on you, right? As you're walking through an airport, as you're walking down the street. I don't like that at all. That takes me off my game. That makes me feel uncomfortable. And so I think of, and then once we live in a dictatorship where people are being pulled off the street for what they say, for what they write in the newspapers, people are like, oh, well, it's only happening again to this group of people. How do you know? Right? The whole thing about taking away due process is that you don't get to, but I'm not Venezuelan. Good luck telling the Venezuelans that while you're down in El Salvador. But now you're down in El Salvador, who's coming to get you? Right? Ain't gonna be the court. You just down there now. And so I was planning a trip to Europe this summer that I basically have canceled, but I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna cancel. 'Cause I'm not sure that I can get back in the country. I'm not sure how that works. Even on this trip, I've taken, just best practices. I've taken off Face ID on my phone because I don't know if you guys know this, but the government can ask you to look at something. They can't ask you to input something without a warrant. So if you have Face Unlock on your phone, they can be like, look at this. If that opens your phone, then the government has potentially access to everything on your phone. I don't want them to have that, so I took Face ID off and I auto-locked my phone after 30 seconds. You know how annoying that is in an airport? Right? Every time I gotta and of course I did the whole extended 10-digit passcode. So every time I was like, right? But I'm scared. I don't want ICE to get my phone. Not that I have anything on it other than I hate you, Donald. But I don't want them to have that. So these kinds of concerns, fears, issues, those are cropping up more and more and more. And then just to answer the last part of that question, the way that you balance it is, what else am I going to do? Right? There are people risking a lot more than me to oppose this man. And if anything, what makes me angry is when people who are more protected than I am don't even do what I'm doing, right? So you don't want to put me in a room with Chuck Schumer right now, right? I'm not going to be nice to that man at this point because there are people who are risking far more than what Chuck Schumer has to risk to stand up to this man. There are people who are risking far more than what Paul Weiss or Skadden Arps or any of these law firms, some of which I used to work for, have to risk to stand up to this man. And those people, so my disgust at those people does not allow me, myself, to then be quiet. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
There are questions here related to, what are you most worried about when you look at the state-sponsored terrorism, the chaos of the national and global economy, and the ripping apart of the institutions that have made this country great? What are you most worried about?
Kash Patel. Straight up. The FBI. The FBI is a bad organization in good times.
Right. Right.
The FBI is a dangerous thing when decent people are right. You know how terrifying it is when non-decent people are running it?
Yeah, scary.
It's a secret police that we have already embedded in the country. So I'm kind of, personally, I am most afraid of Kash Patel coming to my house.
And the way he looks at you.
Right? There was a fire on my street. It was, fire, kind of a false alarm. Whatever. But, you see the fire trucks outside, on your street. And so I'm a nosy suburban neighbor. I'd go, what's up, right? I know the fire chief. The fire chief watches R. Melber all the time, so we're tight. And it's just talking about what's going on. It was a false alarm, whatever. So I go back into my house, and my kids are crying. I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they're crying. And I'm like, what the hell? And he's like, we thought it was the police, and they were taking you away. And so I say to my 12-year-old, the older one, because my wife was at work and my mom was at the dentist. So I say to my 12-year-old, how is crying going to help me? You know who the lawyer is. You know what the numbers are. If I get taken away, you've got to be the one to call the lawyer. Crying doesn't help me. And that was of course, initially just made him cry more. But and of course the 9-year-old who's always a little bit more I would have done it. I would have called the lawyer eventually. But that was a hard conversation to have. Yeah. But that was the conversation that I needed to have in that moment because frankly, crying literally wasn't going to help. I've had to talk to my kids about what swatting is, not because it's happened to me, but because it's happened to people in the media that I know. And you swat a black person, that's not a troll, that's not a prank, that is,
death threat.
That is a death threat. And to your family, not even to you. Because I know I would know what to do, but I had to tell my kids what to do in the event that we get swatted and literally people break down our door coming for me, right? And I'm just look, whenever that happens, no matter what they say, you have to remain calm, you can't cry, you cannot run. Telling my kids, who obviously like to run around our house all the time, that except for when you really think you need to run, that's the time you most definitely cannot run. Those are difficult, hard conversations. And so those are the things that kind of in a personal way I'm most worried about.
So we're running out of time and people have some questions. 2 questions related to the Supreme Court. Does reforming the Supreme Court need to be a part of Project 2029? Can it be done? And this question says, what are your thoughts on expanding the Supreme Court?
Yes,
or
yes.
term limits.
Yes, of course. It was so expanding the Supreme Court was my project 2021, right? Like I said repeatedly that the first thing that Biden should do was expand the court. If he had done that when he had the opportunity, when they had both control of both houses of Congress, we wouldn't have lost Roe. The Supreme Court has long been drunk on its own power. The only way you can bring it under control is to increase the number of justices. Can it be done? If the Democrats ever control the House and the Senate and get rid of the filibuster, which is freaking stupid, and the White House, you can expand the number of justices on the Supreme Court by the simple passage of a bill. It doesn't require a constitutional amendment. It's just a bill. And it would make things better. And when the usual counter argument I get is, oh, but if you Democrats do it, then Republicans will do it when they have the chance. I say, so the what? Nothing, like, it can't be worse than it is now. If it's 6-3 now, you give me 10 justices, it's 13-6, and then Republicans come back and they make it 16-13, what have you lost? Nothing. It's just as bad as it is now, but maybe while it was 13-6, you had an opportunity to secure voting rights and make it much harder for Republicans to ever take back control of all three branches of government again.
This person wants to know, how did you sort of come up with the book? Did you have a collection of all these bad laws and then thought, hey, I should write a book about them, the 10 worst ones, or something else? And they said, also, I loved watching you in New York City with Brian, on WNYC with Brian Lehrer.
Brian's the best. I was literally on a plane, and it was delayed, and I was getting really pissed off about how the plane was delayed, and I was basically bitching to everybody in the back half of the plane about how our rights were being taken away by Federal Society fat cats because of this thing called deregulation. And as I was starting to yell, my mother was like, "You're acting just like your father," and so I kind of slunk back down into my seat, and I was like, man, if I could tell this story, just this story of how literal Robert Bork rose his segregationist hand out the grave to put my in this seat right now, people would read it. And so the first law I thought about was the Airline Deregulation Act. And I was like, if I could just tell the story of how that happened, that's a good story. And then once I at first I was just like, I'm just gonna do an article. And then as I was kind of thinking about it, I was like, well, I could probably find like 6 or 7 other ones like this. If I could find 10, that's like a book, so.
This person wants to know if you think if the TSA and DHS after 9/11 were an encroachment on our fundamental rights, given that travel is so fundamental.
Absolutely. Do you ever see Fight Club? There's that scene with Brad Pitt. He's talking to Ed Norton. He's talking to himself. And spoiler alert. And and they're like looking at the airline safety card, and he's making the point about how like all these people are calm in this unlikely events of a water landing. And it's false. Like it's there to placate people. It's not there to actually make people survive a water landing because you're not going to survive a water landing. That's TSA. You don't need to take off your shoes. It doesn't help anything. But it makes people feel like, oh, we got security because look, I had to take off my shoes and I had to strip naked. So like, what could possibly go wrong? Dude, like it's not actually helping. It is the appearance of security as opposed to actual security. And where I think it has an even bigger effect on this country. Look, I like to say it like you can do generations however you're supposed to do it. Like, you're whatever generation you are based on, where you were when Alanis Morissette made that song. The generational divide between Gen Z and between Gen X and the millennials is 9/11. If you remember what flying used to be like before 9/11, you are a Gen Xer. And if you don't, if that's just a story to you, you are a millennial. And the thing about it is not just flying, as much as I hate goddamn flying. It's about an acceptance of government power. That's really what 9/11 changed. We became willing to give up fundamental freedoms, fundamental rights, and fundamental just comforts in the name of false security. Mm-hmm. And we as a generation, one of the reasons I keep saying that Gen X is a failure of a generation, we were like, okay, that seems fair. And that subjugation, that our willingness to do that in so many ways has set the stage for what we're seeing now. Our generation especially is used to fascism. And it starts on 9/11. It starts on the choices that we made after 9/11, which was arresting, which was shocking. I mean, everybody remembers exactly where they were and exactly what they were doing, exactly what they were gonna do, but didn't because that day happened, right? We all have visceral memories of it, but it shocked us so much that it made us give up certain things that we've never really fully gotten back.
So we got 7 minutes left. I got 2 questions that are related. One is, you say effectively voter registration is voter suppression. Could you explain? Similar to that is, in bad laws, you focus on bad laws that we should change. What about our criminal justice system? Some key things that you feel should change in voter registration as voter suppression, and the criminal justice system, what should change?
Yeah, and look, I read about felony murder. Like, there are any number of criminal justice issues that I think need either to be repealed or reformed. I think there are 2 laws in the book that are about specifically that we can repeal: the felony murder one that we've already talked about, and the Armed Career Criminals Act, which is the precursor to the 1994 crime bill. But that entire kind of way of thinking with mandatory minimums, it again violates my sense of justice. You should punish people for what they do, not what they thought about doing, what their friends thought about doing, or because it's the 3rd time they did it. You punish them for what they did. You shouldn't put people away from murder for stealing a car, even if it's the 3rd time they stole a car. That's fundamentally unjust. So in the book, I kind of focus on criminal justice reform from a true sense of justice, but there are any number of other criminal justice laws that I would want to, if not completely repeal, certainly significantly reform because of its disparate racial or gender impact. It's rife throughout our system. I generally can't get why people agree. I mean, honestly, I was saying this during George Floyd, that like, all right, y'all are here for 2 weeks and you guys are feeling really good about yourself, but you're gonna forget about all these issues, 6 months later. And I basically, I took the under and I was still wrong because white people forgot about it even more quickly than that.
What do you feel is the biggest challenge facing Democrats and Republicans, the 2-party system?
The biggest challenge?
No, facing both parties. In general.
The biggest challenge for the Republicans, right, is that at some point it gets boring beating up the weak guy, right? Like their fists, I'm sure, are getting like tired because they just keep, ouch. I need some Ben Gay. This punching you is too, like that's their challenge, right? The Democratic challenge is not knowing how to fight, not knowing that they're in a fight, right? The Democrats are they're characters in like a Wes Anderson movie who think they're in a Wes Anderson movie, who haven't realized they're in a Quentin Tarantino movie. Right?
Yes. Yes. So you talk about your mom and you said she's hurt right now, after all. Born, again, Mississippi in the 50s. This last question is, where are we headed with Boasberg versus Trump administration? And sort of, the trajectory of your mom's life and what you said in the back room, where she is in her perspective, how she's feeling now about.
So I was saying my mom was born in 1950 in Mississippi, the deeply segregated South. And watching her go through the Trump administration has been the most painful part of it for me. Because she cries a lot. And she says, as she's weeping, we thought we won. We thought we had defeated these people. And we hadn't. It was all fake. It was all a lie. And now I'm looking at a situation where my grandchildren will have to fight battles that I thought screw the fact that I didn't think my son would have to fight them. The fact that my grandchildren are going to have to fight these battles that I already thought that I won, it just breaks her heart.
Do you think America will be here in 10 years?
Oh, some form of it. I don't know this form of it. Again, I use the Roman analogy, right? Rome existed as a republic and as a dictatorship, and Augustus did not go around calling himself a dictator. Augustus went around calling himself just the first citizen, the more equal citizen than the rest of the citizens. Right? But he didn't say he was a dictator. That was a word that was put on him later by history, not by himself in real time. Now, there's going to be some version of America. Whether or not that is a free and fair version of America is anyone's guess. But here's the other thing. Black people have already lived in that unfree version of America.
Yeah.
We know what this country is about. And part of what we're seeing right now is just white people being like, oh, wow, we might not be free. No shit, Sherlock. Like, welcome to my world. Right? So like part of my hope for the future then is that you already had the white folks who kind of got it, right? There were white folks who got it in abolitionist time. I work for an abolitionist publication. Like, there are always going to be some minority of white folks who get it, right? As fascism grows, as it does the Sun thing, more and more white people will get it. And if you can just get those white people to understand that their best way of saving their country is to listen to the black folks that have been trying to save it, it can be saved.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bad Law, the 10 popular laws that are ruining America. Eli Missel, you are at the Commonwealth Club, World of Affairs. Thank you for your time and your questions and well, we have 2 minutes. You have anything else on your mind?
Oh, come on, that was a good mic drop. I will say, so I'm going to get the mic off and then I'll go back and sign books, and happy to answer more questions while I'm signing. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.